Lost in the fog of a cosmic storm, floating on whimsical wavelengths is the norm. Dancing through the stars, chasing spectrums of light, riding the waves that are just out of sight.
Welcome to the first episode of Whimsical Wavelengths, a science podcast where we discuss science news, science in the media, science and history, and whatever topics tickle my fancy. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Zurich, or as I prefer, just Jeff. I got my degree studying active volcanoes using geophysics and geochemistry, but we're going to be talking about many different aspects of science here. Are there going to be times where I get myself too far out over my skis? Probably. The plan is to explore so much. In the future, we'll have guests that join us to share their expertise, as it is a wide, wide world out there. Nothing set in stone just yet, but here are a few of the upcoming episodes that I'm planning. Join fellow geologist and volcanologist to watch Dante's Peak. Take a look at modern scientific conspiracy theories and how they mix with media, like earthquake prediction and the high-frequency active auroral research program, or via its acronym, HAARP. Explore the scientific method and history, looking at how early ideas were wrong but still based on data or observations, like miasma. It's also the first episode, so you, the listener, should, take it with a grain of salt, as it may take some time before this gets into some kind of rhythm. And being the first episode, I figured I'd make it about the title, Whimsical Wavelengths. Life is like a wavelength, constantly oscillating between the highs and the lows. Just as a wave rises and falls, so do the circumstances of life. From cresting a peak of success or plunging into hardship, we learn and grow from both the crests and the troughs, gaining wisdom and resilience, just as different wavelengths make up the spectrum of light. The experiences of life contribute to our unique tapestry of existence. I really need to stay out of motivational speeches. Although it was terrible, it was whimsical. In science, wavelengths or frequencies are used everywhere. Let's start with some definitions. Wavelength, the measured distance between two identical points on two back-to-back waves. Frequency, number of occurrences of a repeating event per unit time. The metric measurement of this is per second and called hertz. Frequency and wavelength are inversely proportional to each other, meaning as frequency increases, wavelength decreasing. And just for those listening, a quick public service announcement or PSA. The frequency of bad science jokes used here is high. It will hurts. Okay. A search of the term wavelength and its etymology, meaning the study and the origin of words, it'll direct you to 1850 with a reference to how a prism splits sunlight into a rainbow or spectra. But if we want to talk about the concepts of wavelengths and frequency, well, it goes way back. More retro than anything you're likely to encounter on the street or your parents' closets. I'll start with the recounting, as brief and abridged as it is, where so much starts when we start to probe the beginnings of scientific thought. Ancient Greece. We're going to start with Aristotle, a philosopher who speculated on the nature of light and sound. Aristotle suggested sound travels through the air as waves in the 4th century BC. However, he got one major thing wrong. Aristotle thought higher frequencies traveled faster. That mistake would take centuries to correct. Maybe it's a good thing here to note and just get out of the way right away in episode 1. While Aristotle was a philosopher instead of a scientist, the same general premise applies. The scientific method works like this. develop an idea or hypothesis, design a test or an experiment to test said hypothesis, then review the results. If the experiment supports the hypothesis, great. But that doesn't mean the original hypothesis is truth and job done. No, we need to keep testing. Where data supports it, you can treat the idea as true until new data shows otherwise. The best way to correct science is more science, not feelings or opinions. So it took until the 1640s for an experiment to be designed and conducted by Pierre Gassendi. Now, I'm going to try my best at pronouncing names and things that are strange, but I'm going to fail a lot, so please have some mercy on me. I will do my best. So this was the first experiment that attempted to directly measure the speed of sound. He also showed that the speed of sound was invariant to frequency. Broadly, the first experiment assumed that light was effectively infinitely faster than the speed of sound. And then we used the difference in time of seeing a light and hearing the sound of what created that light. Now, there was a lot more than just scientific curiosity behind Pierre Gassendi's experiments. He also really didn't like Aristotle's philosophy and wanted to prove him wrong at every turn. Another reminder that people are messy. But that doesn't take away from the data and the experiment. Regardless of the reasons behind the ambition to measure the speed of sound, it certainly moved forward the understanding of sound and traveling waves, and ushered in the modern study of acoustics. Now it's time to turn into the light. And by the way, you got to ask a question. When getting on a plane, why didn't the photon check a bag? Well, it was because it was traveling light. Yeah, well, that greatly abridged history of sound, it's time we turn into the light. Thoughts and beliefs changed over the millennia with this respect. The ancient Egyptians believed light came from the gaze of their supreme god, Ra. The Greeks thought it came from within an individual instead, that there was internal fires to the eye that either illuminated the world or, when combined with the fire of the sun, lit up the world. It took over a millennia until
Hasanepne Hey Sam,
a Persian scientist, used a combination of logic and experimentation to show that light did not shoot out from our eyes, but instead entered into them to produce vision. Things began to advance quickly in the later half of the 17th century. Two competing ideas for the nature of light caused a pretty good scientific debate. The two ideas were between treating light as a wave or a particle. Christian Huygens championed the idea that light behaved as a wave propagating through space, and Isaac Newton argued it was a particle. Did you know that Isaac Newton was actually Canadian? He had to have been. He proved that F equals ma. Eh? Okay. And by the way, I am Canadian, so I feel like I can make that joke. We could do a lot to explore Sir Isaac Newton's life and ideas, from his thoughts on gravity, light, calculus, and motion to his mental health and insecurities. He had an outsized role in scientific thought, one of the giants that the science of today stands upon. He had a larger reputation than Christian, and therefore his idea did win out. Light, at least for now, was thought to be made of particles, and it took approximately a century before this would change. In the early 1800s, a scientist, Thomas Young, conducted the famous double-slit experiment, showing that light was in fact a wave. And then there was James Clerk Maxwell. His work unified electricity and magnetism, showing light is an electromagnetic wave. Then we get to one of the great visionaries of the scientific world, Nikola Tesla. The mythology surrounding Nikola Tesla is astonishing. I will do an episode, or perhaps several, on Nikola Tesla, his exploits, and the mythology of the man. It is truly mind-boggling the amount of conspiracy theories that swirl around Mr. Tesla. He did so much, but here I will mention radio. He was one that harnessed the properties of electromagnetic waves to transmit information over vast distances. This achievement marked the dawn of the wireless age, forever transforming the way we communicate. Based on the 1800s, it seemed, in the end, Newton lost the debate. It was clear light traveled in waves. However, the 20th century would change that again. The modern giants of science like Albert Einstein, Max Planck, and others were able to show through repeated experiments that light and matter exhibit properties of both waves and particles. It is termed as the wave-particle duality. To put a different spin on our existence, we're all made up of matter that has properties of both particles and waves. My bias is that the expression of being in sync, or we're on the same wavelength, is a lot more meaningful than the older equivalent of being on the same page or singing from the same songbook. Why did the physicist refuse to share his wavelength? Well, because he didn't want to be on the same frequency as everyone else. Today, the legacy of wavelengths lives on in countless applications across all disciplines, from telecommunications like Wi-Fi, cell phones, medical imaging, astronomy, quantum computing, seismic waves, orbits, gravity waves, hydraulic jumps, AC current, microwaves, GPS, X-rays, ocean dynamics, climate, deformation, and the human brain, sunspot activity, radiation, solar winds, etc. When you get down to it, wavelengths shape our modern world and the understanding we have of this world in really profound ways. For instance, you could answer the question,
What is your favorite color?
450 nanometers, no 580! For those not in the know, that was a Monty Python reference with the wavelengths of the colors of blue, no yellow. Somehow, the joke didn't get better when I explained it. So the next two episodes deal with volcanoes, a seismically uplifting pair of episodes. The first setting up the scientific background. What is a volcano? The Cascade volcanic arc. Where does the Cascades magma come from? And volcanic activity. The second episode, we will join a few of my colleagues to watch the movie. I'm sure there'll be drinks involved, where we will react to the good, the bad, and the ugly. The episode won't be a movie in length, however, I'm not sure the form it'll take just yet. After that, perhaps one of the many modern scientific conspiracy theories that are out there. Finally, this is the first episode. It's on the shorter side of what will be served up here. Think of it as a trailer for what will come. Some episodes will be sillier than others, some more in depth on the science. Some will have guests. As said at the top, it may take a few episodes for the podcast to really hit its stride here. So feedback is encouraged. Subscribe, leave a rating, write a review, tell a friend, and or send a suggestion to me. Email for the show is in the show notes. Thanks for listening.
Lost in the fog of a cosmic storm, floating on whimsical wavelengths is the norm. Dancing through the stars, chasing spectrums of light, riding the waves that are just out of sight. In a world so chaotic that misbehaves, melodies that echo show us sex always. Colors intertwine, painting the sky. We're lost in the rhythm as the universe flies by. Oh, we're tuned in, feeling the beat of the unknown. Can you hear it? It's echoing through your bones. this melodic maze, we let